President Biden responded to the shooting, calling on Congress to act on gun control measures. Here's his spokesperson today.
We still don't know all of the details, but what's clear, as the president has said, is that we are suffering from an epidemic of gun violence in this country, both in mass shootings and in the lives that are being taken in daily gun violence that doesn't make national headlines. That's why he has already taken an initial set of actions on gun violence that will save lives, and that's why he's calling on Congress to take action, including calling on the Senate to pass the 3 bills to strengthen background checks that have already cleared the House with bipartisan support and which have the overwhelming backing of the American people.
And joining us now to talk about the status of gun control in America, ABC's Molly Nagel and the White House and ABC's Aaron Katersky are both here. Molly, I'll start with you. What can you tell us about the state of play? What are these measures that are held up in the Senate right now, and where do they stand?
Well, Diane, we do know that the president has been briefed on that situation in California because measures in the Senate still remain in the Senate. They have not seen action on them despite President Biden's call for action for these measures that would address those background check loopholes. So allow for gun purchasers to bypass that background system, things like the Charleston loophole. These are measures that Biden has called for throughout his campaign and during his time in the White House, but we have not seen any movement here in terms of gun reform, despite the fact that, according to the National Gun Archives, Gun Violence Archives, there have been more than 200 mass shootings under Biden's administration. That's with 4 or more people shot, injured, and killed.
And as news of the shooting was coming in, one of the senators from the state of California, Dianne Feinstein, was questioning President Biden's nominee to be the next head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Listen to Senator Feinstein.
And I guess I've been listening to these questions being asked and responded to for more than 20 years now, and nothing changes on the streets. And I think we all need to think a little bit about that. You know, this is a gun-happy nation, and everybody can have their gun. But what is happening out there in the killing of innocents should be protected by our laws.
Killing of innocents. Aaron, you could hear the frustration there, but in your view, what's the disconnect here? I mean, nobody wants these mass shootings. Nobody wants these things to happen, not with impunity, but almost without pause to consider the consequences or the level of difficulty. Just pick up your gun, go shoot people. So where does public opinion stand on the issue? I guess we are having a little trouble with that. And let me go to Molly on that question. So if you've taken a look, you know, there have been a lot of proposals. Dianne Feinstein there was one of the original sponsors of the 1990s era assault weapons ban, very fiercely criticized by gun advocates as not really being very precisely targeted, but something that had public support. What about today? This is an old debate. After every single one of these shootings, nothing ever happens.
Well, bipartisan, that measure that you talked about in the 90s did have President Biden standing behind it, one of his legislative accomplishments that he's been most proud of. But you're right, this is not a new situation here at the White House. We have seen the flag above the White House lowered many times during the Biden administration already for many of these mass shootings. And every time afterwards, we hear these calls for action. We hear that there's renewed hope that there can be bipartisan support. These continue to be talked about in the Senate, but there's just no evidence right now. We have no evidence that it's being brought to the floor with the Democrats holding that narrow majority in the Senate. It's a 50-50 split with with Vice President Kamala Harris holding that tie-breaking vote. So Democrats will need to get Republican support to get these measures that have passed the House already into the Senate.
And Molly, you talked about bipartisanship at the beginning of your answer there. Biden campaigned on his ability to unify both parties. So what is he doing to try to get both parties to find some common ground on how to reduce gun violence in this country?
Well, bipartisanship is something that Biden is looking to do in every aspect of his administration. But on the issues of guns, we have seen the president address this back in April. He had an event here at the White House in the Rose Garden with gun advocates and members of Congress when he signed some executive orders to address some of the gun issues here in the country, like ghost guns, those guns that don't have serial numbers and are difficult to trace, and those red flag laws that would prevent gun purchasers who have a flag on their personal history from purchasing a gun. But this is something that Biden will continue to struggle with. He has said that he is calling on Congress to take actions. He mentioned those House bills, looking to get those taken up in the Senate. But we haven't necessarily seen the president coming out in a public way, negotiating on this issue forcefully. We've seen him make these calls. It's an issue that's been very important to him throughout his 36 years in the Senate and beyond. But one thing that we just haven't quite seen yet is the president making this a priority in terms of his legislative agenda. We know that the president wants to get this done. This is an important thing that is on his agenda, and he campaigned on it fiercely, but we haven't seen that action happen quite yet.
Yeah, Molly, it's one thing to pass executive orders and executive actions, and another in terms of trying to get real legislation passed through Congress. So could this latest, yet another mass shooting, maybe bump this up in the president's priority lists?
Well, that's certainly what gun advocates are going to hope for here. The truth is the president has a very full legislative plate. We know that he is pushing on this infrastructure plan. Behind that, he has his Americans Families Plan, where he's looking to address a lot of the hardships that have still come out of COVID-19, trying to build the country back, not just to where it was before, but as he says, build it back better. But he also, at the same time, is pushing for police reform, and he was very optimistic about that yesterday. So the president has a lot of legislative agendas, a lot of items on his agenda as he moves forward here. So it remains to be seen where gun reform and legislation will land in the wake of this latest mass shooting.
You know, Aaron, and the public opinion on this is not as divided as the politics, is it? The Republican Party gives very little, if any, ground on any proposals to reform the nation's gun laws, but the public's in a different place, isn't it?
Yeah, public opinion has, by and large, been with many gun reform pieces of legislation, Terry, and I wonder if part of the problem is addressing exactly what legislation would do. We know that mass shootings get us talking about the issue, but they account for such a small percentage of gun violence that many feel that these big, broad bills are just a bit misguided. And to that end, we know the Justice Department today was talking about taking a more community-based approach to try and get at violence before it even happens. But I wonder, too, Terry, if there's not a sense of futility. If after Newtown, as President Obama had expressed at the time, if 20 first graders killed by gun violence wasn't enough to motivate some kind of change, it's hard to see how any other individual mass shooting is necessarily going to push the ball forward. And so the focus has been on other measures that could possibly stem the tide, including locally based gun buybacks, mental health counseling, because the reality is the nation is awash in guns. There are more guns than people in the United States, as many as 400 million guns, and plenty of triggering events, including the one, Terry, that we've all collectively just been through, the pandemic.
And on that side, there's no question that about 2/3 of Americans, a super majority, say they would like to see more stricter gun laws, and the Republican Party in Congress tends to look at it the other way. Around the country, coming out of this pandemic, you know, what are we seeing in terms of trends of gun violence in America, as well as mass shootings like the one we're covering today?
Yeah, the gun violence has only increased. We've seen mass shootings of late in New Jersey at a house party over the weekend. Now this one in California. It's happening across the country. Not all of them get the kind of attention that we're giving this one today, Terry, but the guns are out there. The access is relatively easy. And during the pandemic, gun sales surged. And with all of the job loss, with all of the economic hardship, there are plenty of triggering events if people are prone to this, to then go out and do this. And we know that mass shooters often do have some kind of triggering event in their life that predates their act of violence. The Secret Service has taken a look at some of this and has studied this phenomenon. And so trying to get at the root of that may well be easier and more effective than any one particular piece of gun legislation.
All right, a long way to go before the country even confronts the problem, much less addresses it practically. Aaron Katersky and Molly Nagel, thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.